Cowboy confronts an 85-year-old Apache. 30 minutes later, the son arrives with his own clan. What began as a simple trespass dispute was about to turn into something no one could have imagined. Garrett McKinley noticed the old man from nearly 100 yards away. Seated perfectly still beside the creek that sliced through his property, the Apache's weathered hands rested on a worn walking stick, his gray hair catching the midday sunlight like strands of silver. He appeared frail, almost spectral, set against the twisted cottonwood trees behind him. Garrett's jaw hardened as he urged his horse forward. This was his land, bought and paid for with sweat and blood. He had worked 16-hour days to build this ranch from nothing, and he wasn't about to let some wandering Indian believe he could camp wherever he pleased. With every step closer, Garrett's irritation grew. The old man didn't even look up. He just sat there as if he owned the place, as if generations of McKinleys hadn't fought and died to carve a living out of this wild land. Garrett dismounted 20 feet away, his boots striking the earth with intentional force. At last, the Apache lifted his head, revealing eyes that seemed to carry decades of memory. But Garrett saw only challenge. "You're trespassing, old man," Garrett said, his voice slicing through the afternoon calm. "This land is private." The Apache's expression didn't shift. He merely gestured toward the creek where clear water moved over smooth stones. "Water calls to all living things," Joseph Redhawk said quietly, his English careful yet precise. "I mean no harm." "I don't care what you meant," Garrett snapped. "You can't just wander onto another man's land because you're thirsty. There's a town 5 miles east with a, well," he thought of the stories he'd grown up hearing: raiding parties, stolen cattle, families killed in their sleep. This old man might look harmless, but Garrett knew better than to trust appearances. The Indians were Indians, and they brought nothing but trouble to folks trying to earn an honest living. "I will walk," Joseph said, pushing himself up with his stick. His legs shook with effort, and for a moment it looked like he might fall back down. Garrett watched with rising impatience. A part of him knew he should help, but pride and prejudice held him in place. This was exactly how trouble started. Show kindness once, and soon the whole tribe believed they had a claim to your land. "Make it quick," Garrett said, folding his arms. "And don't come back," as Joseph Redhawk took his first unsteady step away from the creek. Everything changed. His walking stick caught on a root and he pitched forward, crying out as his body slammed into the hard ground. Garrett stared at the fallen Apache, torn between conflicting thoughts. The practical side of him said to let the old man leave however he could, but something deeper, something his mother once tried to teach him about simple decency, made him pause. That pause would cost him everything, because 30 miles away, Thomas Redhawk had already noticed his father was missing. And when Thomas Redhawk went looking, he never rode alone. Garrett stood frozen as Joseph Redhawk lay unmoving, a thin line of blood trailing from a cut on his forehead where it struck a stone. The old man's breathing was shallow, his eyes closed, and for a horrifying instant Garrett thought he might be dead. His thoughts raced. A dead Apache on his land would bring nothing but disaster. The territorial officials would ask questions he couldn't answer cleanly. Worse, if the old man had family searching for him, they would eventually trace him here. "Hey!" Garrett called, his voice rougher than he meant. "Old man, you all right?" Joseph's eyes fluttered open, unfocused. He tried to sit up and groaned, clutching his ribs where he'd hit the rocks. Despite every instinct warning him back, Garrett stepped closer. The sensible move was to get this Apache off his land before anyone came looking. But the man clearly couldn't walk. Maybe couldn't even stand. "Can you get up?" Garrett asked, hating the concern in his voice. Joseph struggled into a sitting position. Pain etched across his face. When he spoke, his voice was faint. "My ribs," he whispered. "Something broken." Garrett muttered a curse. This was exactly how a simple property argument turned into a nightmare. He couldn't leave an injured old man to die, but helping him could bring consequences he couldn't control. He scanned the horizon for riders. The last thing he needed was someone finding him standing over an injured Apache with no witnesses. "Look," Garrett said, kneeling reluctantly. "I didn't push you. You fell." Joseph Redhawk studied him with ancient eyes, and something unspoken passed between them. A recognition of shared trouble. "I know," Joseph said. "Help me to shade." Every part of Garrett resisted. His father had warned him about showing weakness, about how kindness could be mistaken for invitation. But staring at this wounded elder, Alone and vulnerable, Garrett couldn't ride away. He helped Joseph to his feet, bearing most of his weight as they moved to the shade of a cottonwood. The old man felt lighter than expected, fragile in Garrett's grip. "Water," Joseph murmured once they reached the tree. Garrett handed him his canteen and watched him drink slowly. Up close, Garrett noticed the beadwork on Joseph's worn vest, the careful braiding of his gray hair with small ornaments. This wasn't a savage drifter. There was dignity here, a life shaped by purpose. "What's your name?" Garrett asked before he could stop himself. "Joseph Redhawk," came the reply. "And you are Garrett McKinley. This is your land," Joseph nodded. "Good land. Good water. My grandfather hunted here long ago." The word struck Garrett hard. This wasn't random trespassing. It was older than deeds and fences. Then Joseph spoke again and Garrett's blood went cold. "My son will wonder where I am." "Your son?" Garrett asked softly. "Thomas Redhawk. He leads our people now." Joseph met Garrett's eyes. "When he cannot find me, he will come." The name hit Garrett like a blow. Every rancher within 100 miles knew Thomas Redhawk, the Apache leader respected by both his people and the government, a man who kept his word. And Garrett was sitting beside his injured father. "Thomas Redhawk is your son," Garrett said, his voice cracking. Joseph nodded. "He is protective. When the sun lowers and I have not returned, he will gather the young warriors and search." Panic clawed at Garrett's chest. An injured Apache elder was bad enough, but Thomas Redhawk finding his father hurt on a white man's land could mean war or the end of everything Garrett had built. "I need to get you back to your people," Garrett said quickly. Joseph tried to stand and cried out, collapsing back. His face was pale, sweat beading on his brow. "Cannot ride," he gasped. "Ribs, maybe lung." Garrett stared at him, desperate. He couldn't move him. He couldn't leave him. And time was slipping away. Then he heard it, the sound that froze his blood. Distant hoofbeats, many horses, fast and organized. Joseph heard it too. His eyes met Garrett's with something like pity. "They come," Joseph whispered. Garrett grabbed his rifle, hands shaking. 6 bullets against however many riders approached. The odds were terrible, but he wouldn't go down without a fight. The sound grew louder. Dust clouds rose against the sky. He had minutes, maybe less, before they crested the ridge and saw him standing over their injured elder. 2 minutes to explain the impossible. The thunder of hooves swelled as 8 Apache warriors appeared on the ridge, their horses dark against the blazing sky. At their head rode a man who commanded attention even at a distance, Thomas Redhawk. Garrett's finger tightened on the trigger, but Joseph's hand clamped onto his wrist with surprising strength. "No," Joseph whispered urgently. "If you raise that weapon to my son, there will be no words to save you." The riders slowed near the creek. Thomas dismounted in one smooth motion, his eyes immediately finding his father beneath the tree. What Garrett saw there wasn't wild rage, but something more dangerous, controlled fury. Thomas was younger than Garrett expected, around 45, with shoulder-length black hair and scars that spoke of survival. He wore traditional Apache clothing mixed with riding gear, a knife at his side worn by use. "Father," Thomas said in Apache, his voice sharp. Joseph replied, gesturing weakly toward Garrett. The exchange was brief, calming. Thomas's dark eyes turned to Garrett, assessing him like a predator. When he spoke, his English was perfect. "You are on your land," Thomas said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir," Garrett replied, hating how small he sounded. "This is my property and my father was trespassing," Thomas continued. Again, not a question. Garrett nodded. Thomas stepped closer and Garrett resisted raising his rifle. The other warriors remained mounted, alert. "Tell me what happened," Thomas ordered. Garrett explained everything. The discovery, the argument, the fall. Thomas's face never changed, but judgment was clear. "You gave my father water," Thomas observed. "Yes, he was hurt. But first you told him to leave." The accusation lingered. Garrett flushed. "He was trespassing." "You had a right," Thomas said quietly. "As I have rights." The threat was unmistakable. Garrett glanced at the warriors, calculating how little chance he had. Then Joseph spoke again in Apache, his voice steadier. Thomas listened, his expression shifting. "My father says you helped him when you could have ridden away," Thomas said. "He says you brought water and shade. He says you were afraid, the truth stung. Wouldn't you be?" Garrett asked. For the first time, respect flickered in Thomas's eyes. Yes, he admitted. The moment stretched. Then Thomas knelt beside his father. Can you ride? Joseph shook his head. Ribs broken. Thomas's jaw tightened. He stood and faced Garrett. My father cannot be moved safely. He will remain here until he heals. Garrett's heart sank. For how long? Thomas's smile was cold. As long as it takes. The sun beat down as the words settled. Days, maybe weeks. Garrett's mind raced. Neighbors, authorities, ruined reputation. Now wait, Garrett began, but Thomas silenced him with a look. My father is injured on your land. Apache law and white law both say you are responsible. I didn't hurt him. And yet, here we are. Garrett knew arguing was useless. I've got a ranch to run, he tried. You will have help, Thomas said. 2 warriors will remain to care for my father and assist with your cattle. Garrett imagined explaining that to his neighbors. People will talk. They will say you honor a debt, Thomas replied. Joseph spoke again, making Thomas's expression soften. My father says you could have left him to die, Thomas told Garrett. He believes there is honor in you. I'm not afraid, Garrett lied. Thomas smiled thinly. You are, and that is wise, Joseph called out weakly, and Thomas knelt beside him, listening with concern. What did he say? Garrett asked. The pain is worsening. He needs white man's medicine. Garrett's world tilted. A dying Apache elder on his land would bring consequences beyond imagining. The doctor won't come for an Indian, Garrett said. Thomas met his gaze. Then you will convince him. Because if my father dies here under your watch... He didn't finish. The threat was clear. Garrett stared back and made a choice that shocked even him. He turned to his horse and mounted. I'll get the doctor, he said. Thomas studied him. Dr. Morrison will resist. Then I'll change his mind. Something like approval flickered. Take Swift Arrow, Thomas said. If Morrison refuses, seeing one of us may clarify matters. Garrett hesitated, then nodded. Time was running out. Joseph's breathing was labored, his color fading. Garrett and Swift Arrow rode hard toward town, the Apache warrior keeping pace effortlessly. Neither spoke, both knowing the stakes. The town appeared as the sun dipped. They thundered down the street, drawing stares. Garrett burst into Dr. Morrison's office. I need you, he said. A man is dying. Morrison's eyes darted to Swift Arrow. What kind of man? The kind who bleeds like you, Garrett snapped. I don't treat Indians, Morrison said flatly. Swift Arrow stepped forward. The man is Joseph Redhawk, he said calmly. His son is Thomas Redhawk, Morrison paled. You're threatening me. Explaining consequences, Swift Arrow replied. Garrett added quietly, if he dies, Thomas will hold me responsible. Morrison understood. I'll get my bag, he said. Already in your buggy, Swift Arrow said. Morrison stared. We watch important things, Swift Arrow replied. As they rode back, Garrett realized this was no accident. The Apache had planned for outcomes. The question nagged him. What else had they been watching? The ride back to Garrett's ranch felt longer than any miles he had ever traveled. Dr. Morrison sat stiffly in his buggy, knuckles white as he gripped the reins. Fear etched deep into his face despite his attempts at professional calm. Swift Arrow rode beside them, silent and steady, his presence a constant reminder that this journey carried consequences far beyond a simple medical call. When they reached the creek, the scene had transformed. The Apache warriors had constructed a small shelter from branches and Garrett's own saddle blankets, forming shade and privacy around their injured elder. Thomas Redhawk knelt beside his father, murmuring softly in Apache while watching his breathing with intense focus. Dr. Morrison climbed down reluctantly, clutching his medical bag as if it were armor. Up close, Joseph Redhawk looked worse. His skin had taken on a pale, waxy tone, and each breath seemed shallow and uneven. I need to examine him, Morrison said quietly. Thomas spoke to his father in Apache, then nodded. He agrees, Thomas translated. The examination unfolded under a heavy silence. Morrison worked carefully, aware of every eye watching his hands. The warriors stood motionless, but their attention was absolute. 2 broken ribs, Morrison said at last. One has punctured the lung slightly. There's internal bleeding, but not enough to be immediately fatal. He looked up at Thomas. He needs rest, medication for pain, and close monitoring. He should recover. Relief crossed Thomas's face, the first genuine emotion Garrett had seen from him. How long? Thomas asked. 2 weeks before he can travel safely. A month would be better. Thomas turned to Garrett. You hear the doctor? My father will remain here during recovery. Morrison packed his tools quickly, clearly eager to leave. I'll return in 3 days, he said. If his condition worsens, send for me at once. You will come? Swift Arrow said calmly. This we understand. After Morrison departed, an uneasy quiet settled over the creek. Garrett found himself responsible for the safety of one of the Apache's most respected elders, with 8 warriors still present on his land. Only 2 will stay, Thomas said, anticipating his concern. Swift Arrow and Running Bear will tend my father and assist you. The others returned. And you? Garrett asked. Thomas's expression was unreadable. I will come and go. My father's recovery is my duty. As the sun dipped low, the remaining warriors mounted and rode off in disciplined silence. Before leaving, Thomas paused beside Garrett. You surprised me today, he said. How? You chose what was right over what was easy. Garrett shifted uncomfortably. I just did what needed doing. No, Thomas said. You did what a man of honor does. With that, he rode away. As the dust settled, Garrett stood beside Swift Arrow, Running Bear, and the sleeping Joseph Redhawk. This is going to be complicated, Garrett muttered. Swift Arrow smiled faintly. The best lessons often are. Days passed, and the arrangement settled into an uneasy rhythm. Swift Arrow proved invaluable, tracking stray cattle with uncanny skill. Running Bear predicted weather shifts before clouds even formed. Joseph slowly regained strength, his presence calm and steady. One evening, as they watched the sunset, Joseph spoke. Your grandfather was a good man. Garrett stared. You knew him? Joseph nodded. During the drought of 62, he let us water our horses here. Ask nothing. The words echoed Joseph's first by the creek. Understanding dawned on Garrett. This had never been random trespassing. Thomas arrived that evening as usual, listening as his father spoke. Perhaps, Thomas said after a pause, it is time to discuss the future. Garrett felt tension coil in his stomach. The government plans changes, Thomas continued. Railroads, settlements, we need allies. Swift Arrow looked up. Thomas offers partnership. Garrett considered the offer carefully. Equal partners, he said finally. Thomas extended his hand. Equal. As they shook, Garrett felt the strength of a man who worked as hard as any rancher. That night, beneath the stars, Garrett realized his life had changed forever, not through force, but through a choice made by a creek. Over the following weeks, Garrett's life took on a rhythm he had never known. Joseph Redhawk grew stronger each day, sitting up beside the fire, sharing meals, telling stories. What had begun as a forced arrangement had evolved into an unexpected alliance. Swift Arrow's skill as a tracker became invaluable. Locating stray cattle in canyons Garrett hadn't even known existed on his property. Running Bear seemed to sense the weather before it arrived, moving livestock to safety before storms could strike. But it was Joseph who surprised Garrett most. One evening, as the sun dipped in brilliant oranges and purples, Joseph spoke, softly. Your grandfather was a good man, he said. Garrett nearly choked on his coffee. You knew my grandfather? Joseph nodded. During the drought of 1862, he allowed our people to water our horses here. He asked nothing, for water belongs to all living things. The truth hit Garrett. This wasn't random trespassing. It was a pilgrimage to a place of kindness. My father never told me that story, Garrett said quietly. Joseph smiled. Your father was young then, fearful of what others said about us. My grandfather judged men by their actions, not their blood. That night, Thomas arrived as usual for his nightly check on his father. Garrett had begun to anticipate these visits. How are you feeling, father? Thomas asked in English, a courtesy he had learned since Garrett was attempting to speak Apache. Strong enough to ride home, Joseph replied. Thomas studied the camp, the fire, the easy camaraderie between Swift Arrow and Garrett. Running Bear teaching Garrett to read the clouds. Perhaps, Thomas said slowly, it is time to discuss the future. Garrett felt unease coil in his stomach. He had dreaded this conversation. The arrangement couldn't last forever. What kind of future, he asked. Thomas sat down across from him, serious. The territorial government plans changes, railroads, settlements, new operations. The old divisions will not protect us. Cooperation will. Garrett considered the weight of those words. Swift Arrow looked up from the map he and Garrett had been examining. Thomas is offering a partnership, he said quietly. A real one. What kind of partnership? Garrett asked, though he already sensed the answer. Thomas explained. Your land borders our winter grazing grounds. Your cattle gain access to better grass in dry months. Our horses can benefit from your breeding knowledge. Together we are stronger. It was generous, wise, and practical. Isolated ranchers were easy targets. United, they would be respected. Garrett shook his head. Town will resist. They will adapt, Thomas said with quiet confidence, or be left behind. Joseph struggled to his feet, nearly recovered. A man's character, he said, is revealed by how he treats those different from him. You have shown yours. Garrett realized he was being offered more than land or cattle, an opportunity to shape the future. If we do this, he said slowly, it must be right. Equal partners, shared decisions, mutual respect. Thomas extended his hand, calloused and strong. Garrett took it. Equal partners, Thomas agreed. That night, as the stars spread overhead, they planned together. Garrett reflected on how much had changed since the day by the creek. He had started isolated, suspicious, prejudiced. Now he was part of a family he had never expected. And in the distance, night birds called to each other across the darkness, a reminder that the most profound changes often begin in the most unlikely encounters. A confrontation that once seemed simple had turned into a lesson in courage, honor, and trust. For Garrett McKinley, true strength was not measured by the gun he carried, nor the land he owned, but by the willingness to open his heart when fear demanded he close it. And so, as the fire crackled and the Apache elders and warriors rested on his land, Garrett understood that the world was larger than he had imagined, and that the bonds forged in hardship often outlast the fear that gave birth to them. This partnership would redefine his life, his community, and the legacy of the land he had fought so hard to protect. What had started as a trespass had become a bridge between worlds, an alliance that promised survival, prosperity, and respect for generations to come.